Well, hello you all. Welcome to another video about how history is something. So today, what we're going to be looking at is World War I and why World War I, the year 1914, has truly marked the beginning of the end of the days of the world of how we know it. The world is ending as we know it. And this is something that started in 1914. Let me go into a little bit of detail as to why. If you look at the timeline of human history, there is a distinct line in the sand, a moment where before and after look like completely different worlds. That line is drawn at the year 1914. Before this, the rhythm of life and of war had remained relatively consistent for centuries. Communication moved at the speed of a horse. Battles were often viewed through a romanticized lens of glory, fought by men in bright uniforms and on open fields. For thousands and thousands of years, wars were fought with sword, horse and buggy, chariots, things of that nature. But then, a single pistol shot in Sarajevo triggered a collapse that didn't just end an era, it began a countdown. Let me explain why. World War I wasn't just another conflict, it was the birth of the modern world. It was the moment humanity realized that it had finally invented the tools to destroy itself. So, in this video, we're going to explore how the events of 1914 set off a chain reaction that is still detonating today, from the trenches of Europe to the rise of artificial intelligence. So now, to understand the shock of World War I, you have to understand the mindset of the people entering into it. In 1914, generals were still preparing for the wars of the past. The French army marched into the battle wearing bright red trousers, believing that camouflage was cowardly, and they expected a war of spirit and morale. These people were completely in a different time period, but you got to understand, this was a time where things were about to make a dramatic shift. See, because when those French warriors marched wearing their bright red trousers, and they thought that camouflage was cowardly, and they thought that there was about to be some honorific war that was going to be happening, well, instead, they got the war of the machine age. You literally had cavalry units, men on horses with lances, riding out to meet armies equipped with machine guns that could fire 600 rounds per minute. The result wasn't a battle, it was industrial slaughter. This was a psychological trauma the world had never experienced. For thousands of years, you fought an enemy that you could see. Now, death came from artillery fired by men miles away. The introduction of the tank changed the very nature of ground control, and the airplane turned the sky into a battlefield. This set a terrifying precedent. Technology would now always outpace our moral ability to control it. The horse and buggy were gone forever, replaced by the tank and the fighter jet. So now when the smoke cleared in 1918, the map of the world had been shredded. Four great empires, which had stood for centuries, effectively vanished. The German Empire, Austria-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the Russian Empire. This collapse left a massive power vacuum. For centuries, Great Britain had been dominant and it had taken over the seas, but the wars had drained Britain's treasury and its youth. And so while Europe was bleeding, the United States was building. See, this is where we see the formation of a unique geopolitical entity. As the dust settled, a shift occurred. The financial center of the world began drifting from London to New York. And while they remained separate nations, the United States and Great Britain began to function with a singular purpose. It was a special relationship that would eventually lead to a dominant 20th century from these two. See, history usually sees one empire fall and another rise to take its place, But here we saw a fusion. The old dominance of Britain merged with the rising might of America to form the Anglo-American world power. This dual world power would go on to shape the international order for the next 100 years. But 1914 was just the beginning. The peace treaties merely paused the violence, but by 1939, the world was back at war and the technology had matured. And in 1945, the countdown accelerated. The invention of the nuclear bomb meant that humanity was no longer just capable of winning wars, but we were capable of ending civilization. This escalation continued through the Cold War and into the 21st century. And on September 11, 2001, the world learned another lesson, that you didn't need a massive standing army to inflict massive damage. Warfare became asymmetric. And now that brings us to today. With all that we have seen go on from 2001 up till now, I hope you all have learned how this catastrophic fall really started in 1914. Because today, we see the return of great power competition, very similar to how it was before World War I broke out. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine is not just a border dispute. It is a proxy war involving the world's major powers, advanced weaponry, and economic warfare. But now, we have a new variable: artificial intelligence. Just as the tank shocked the generals of 1914, AI is shocking the strategists of today. We are entering an era of autonomous weapons, machines that can decide to strike faster than a human can think. The capacity for destruction is no longer just nuclear, it is digital, biological, and worst of all, it's automated. So when you look at the trajectory from 1914 to now, a pattern emerges. We moved from swords to nukes, from human error to algorithmic warfare. We have built a global system that is incredibly powerful, but also incredibly fragile. The Anglo-American world power, which has acted as the policeman for the world for decades, is facing internal division and external pressure. The sheer amount of power in the hands of imperfect people has reached a critical mass. And many observers conclude that the current system of things, it simply can't sustain itself. The world just cannot simply continue to go on how it is. We're simply too powerful to survive our own inventions without intervention. The countdown that began in 1914 is nearing its end. And we all know that. We all know that. No matter how a person may look at something, when they see how things are going on today, most people who think logically will say, we cannot continue down this same path. And so, while that countdown is nearing its end, this doesn't mean that this is going to be the end of humanity. It means the end of the world as we know it. So it is logical to conclude that the current way of ruling the world through war and intimidation and famine and imperialism and in all these new weapons and in just death itself, that is going to soon change forever. What's interesting is that right now we're living through history, and the next chapter will be unlike anything that we have ever seen before. Hey, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, this look at history, comment, like, subscribe, share it around. I'm going to be back with another one real soon. But until then, y'all have a good one. Stay safe. Goodbye.